House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's spending agreement with President Biden passed the House last night, despite 71 GOP votes against the measure. The Senate vote is next, with many Republican senators already speaking out against the legislation, which extends the debt ceiling until January of 2025 with no caps in place and limited actions to address a government debt now nearing $32 trillion. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer has praised the deal, indicating where his party stands. Joining us now from Capitol Hill, Harris Alic has an update for us as he covers Capitol Hill. Harris, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. Always a pleasure to be with you, and it is a hectic day up here on Capitol Hill. The Senate is rushing to pass this debt limit deal so they can all get out of town. The Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said the Congress has to raise the federal debt ceiling by June 5th or potentially face a default on the federal government being able to pay all of its bills. And June 5th, as we know, is only 4 days away, and the Senate is not usually used to moving legislation so quickly, so Senator Schumer is rushing it through as fast as they can. The Senate is a very thought-provoking institution where it requires every single senator to come together and agree to move a piece of legislation. Otherwise, you need 60 hours of debate. Right now, Senator Schumer is working to hatch those deals. But the problem is, obviously, time is running short, and there's a very, very limited ability to change this deal. Both Republicans and Democrats do not like parts of it. They want to strip parts of it out. But there's a very clear indication that if they do and the bill has to go back to the Senate, if they do and the bill has to go back to the House, there are red flags that it might not pass there by June 5th, or that it might not pass at all, given the fact that there's a lot of mounting opposition from both House Democrats and House Republicans over it. Some who even just voted on the bill yesterday are already showing signs of potentially regretting that vote.
So, Harris, what are we hearing in terms of Republican support? We actually were talking with a couple of Republican senators that, because of the unfolding events, were unable to join us this evening. But generally, what are you hearing from Republicans?
Republicans are fairly divided on the deal. Some feel like raising the debt ceiling is going to be a good measure. Some are happy with the fact that the deal has work requirements, but some are also significantly upset that this does not cut spending significantly enough, that it does not include spending caps after 2025. And some are further upset by this provision authored by Congressman Thomas Massey that would essentially cut federal spending across every single department by 1% if the federal government does not pass a budget by January 1st, 2024. And they're saying that if the government cannot agree on a spending fight, that military spending is going to be cut, domestic spending is going to be cut, and a lot of defense hawks are pretty much up in arms over this. Senator Schumer is kind of trying to strike a deal right now where he's saying that as we plan the appropriations budget moving forward, we'll pass a defense supplemental bill early on, so we're not going to have to worry about facing this 1% cut. But there's a lot of opposition mounting here. There's also opposition from Democrats over a pipeline agreement that was wanted by Senator Manchin, and then as I just said recently, there's also opposition just from hardline conservatives who say this does not go far enough. It does not institute work requirements significantly. It does not institute budget caps. It actually expands the number of people who will be on food stamps moving forward. So there's a lot of opposition to this from Republicans.
Yeah, and of course, we got to remind everyone we're still talking about elevated levels of spending. When you look at pre-COVID budget levels of $4.5 trillion, we're now looking at $6.3 trillion post-COVID. So that emergency spending, which was supposed to be one-time spending, has been baked into the bottom line. Another question for you, Harris, we were just talking about, I was just mentioning at the top of the program, a rebuke of the president today when three or four Democrats joined with Republicans to pass a resolution that would block his student loan bailout.
That's right. 3 or 4 Democrats did wind up voting for this resolution that is not going to go into effect because the president is going to veto it. The president has already said that his student loan bailout, which gives individuals upwards of $10,000 to $20,000 of erased student debt, is going to be probably adjudicated by the Supreme Court sometime this year. So I think even though this was a vote that signals just how politically negative the student loan bailout has been in states like Montana, and in just how negatively it's been received in states like Montana and West Virginia, there's also the simple fact that the president's going to veto this measure.
Right.
And you're going to need 2/3 in the Senate and 2/3 in the House to override that veto, and the votes just aren't going to be there. So while some Republicans are applauding these Democrats, there's also the full understanding that this was kind of an easy vote for them to come out on because it's not going to be able to overcome a veto.
Right, right. Plus, I should mention, I think all three of them are in cycle. They're up for re-election, so it does tell us where they've got their finger on the pulse of where the American people are on this bailout. Harris, I want to thank you for joining us. Always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for giving us that Capitol Hill update.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Tony.